Well, welcome to the Church Office podcast.
My name's Gavin Smith, and if you're joining us on video, then here's a little wave.
We're excited to have Nigel Ring join us.
I've never actually heard the word wicked and accountant put in the same sentence.
Well, hello and welcome to the Church Office podcast. My name is Gavin Smith, and it's a joy today to welcome you to our church administration, admin and ops podcast. We love talking about the work of ministry behind the scenes, and we're talking finances today. We're talking treasurers and all those who are involved in making those things happen behind churches. And my special guest is Ashley Ellis from ACAT. How are you doing, Ashley? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this. I think I'm looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, it's great. We just had Ashley and I were just chatting earlier about we both love Disneyland, Florida, and Emma and I went there on our honeymoon for 3 weeks, and you are probably a bigger fan than I am on this, aren't you?
Yes, I think it would be fair to say that I've been a few times. I'll just leave it like that. But yes, first went in 1991 and have been many times since. So
Yeah.
Love it, and we're going again this summer. So we do all the rides, all the parks. Yeah, love it. Love the whole experience. And,
I love it.
Yeah, if we could live there, we would.
Yeah. There's something great about Florida, isn't it? And I was just recounting with Ashley that Emma and I loved these chocolate fudge sundaes at at the SeaWorld park, and we used to have a day at the theme park, and she'd say, "Oh, I fancy one of those. Come on, let's go over to SeaWorld." And yeah, we just had a great time, and yeah, we would love to take the kids back there some point, but it's hugely expensive now. But for just two of you, it's ideal, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. We used to go with the children. The children have left home, but it's a great experience going as a couple. You do different things and you see different things, and and the weather. It's nice to wake up, everyone, particularly in the summer, knowing that you can just put your shorts on and t-shirt on and not worry about anything, apart from the occasional thunderstorm.
Yeah.
Late afternoon, which you have to dodge because they are absolutely drenched, absolutely soaked. But yeah, just love the whole experience. Love the food, the people. Great.
Yeah, it is great. It is great. Well, if you're one of our listeners, Ashley, tell us first of all, what does ACAT stand for? If people have not heard of you.
Yeah, ACAT is the Association of Church Accountants and Treasurers. We are a charity which initially provided training and resources for treasurers of all Christian churches, denominations across the country. So that was what it was initially set up for. We've now expanded that brief, although the title hasn't changed. It's got accountants and treasurers in it. We've now extended that brief to church trustees and church managers. So we cover not just financial stuff, but all church roles and all church responsibilities.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And Ashley and I have kind of connected through the church office, and I've just been kind of keeping tabs on what they're doing, and they're doing a fantastic job. And I was in the room with a couple of church administrators the other day who were saying, just being able to chat to you about tax positions, being able to chat about gift aid, so some more complicated matters, just to get a second opinion on something where their accountant's saying, right, you need to do this now, and they're like, oh right, when did that come into force, and what do we need, what actually do we need to do? To be part of this group and the association to get some advice and help is brilliant.
Yep, brilliant. We have got 17,000 members across the country, so we are quite wide-ranging. But we cover, you were saying, sometimes some fairly specialist subjects like gift aid, accruals, accounting, independent examination. But we also do the basics. We also do instructions, to being a treasurer or a trustee training. So we've got the full range of courses. We also offer helpline and a handbook, and it works well.
It's really useful, and if you found our site useful in getting templates and discussions on things, then you're going to experience the same thing with ACAT. They've got some great training videos. you can access training online. You don't have to travel anywhere. It's all on Zoom, and I guess we push, all of that's come from the pandemic and much more, isn't it? And people are now able to access this information a lot quicker. 17,000 members. That is quite the grace of God at work, isn't it? And that is incredible.
It's a majority of the churches actually across the country. So, like all the Baptist churches, all the Methodist churches, Quakers, URC, about half the Anglican churches, FIEC.
Yeah.
So 3 churches, the lot. Yeah.
And
So,
what's the cost actually for membership? It's a relatively low fee, isn't it? For
extortionate, absolutely extortionate fee. It's if you want to sign up as an individual member,
yeah,
it's £24 a year. But if you're part of a block organization and you find that organization actually pays for you, as a church it could be free, but the denomination or the diocese, in case of Anglican churches, pay £8 per church to join it, and that gives you access to all of our material, all of our training, the handbook, the helpline, which is an incredible resource. If anyone's got any technical questions, they just email the helpline, and they normally get a reply within 24 hours on any technical subject that anyone can think of.
Yeah, which is amazing, isn't it? Just to be able to pick up the phone, to jot something down, to get some advice, because you do feel like you need a second opinion sometimes.
Absolutely.
When you hear something for the first time related to finance, you're like, really, should we be doing that, or is this new? And what you guys do so brilliantly is you're also tracking that kind of bigger picture, aren't you? Because I find for me as a church manager, I'm busy, I'm in the day-to-day, I'm managing lots of things, spinning lots of plates. You don't always get the time to go, okay, these are the changes coming in, these are the new things you need to think about. But you guys bring that broader picture, which is really helpful.
We do. So we have a communications team, 2 people, and we produce a monthly newsletter to all of our membership, and that basically provides all the members with anything that is relevant to them doing their job. So changes in legislation, gift aid rules seem to change almost every year. So we keep on top of that. We've got good links with organizations, insurance companies, software companies, church software companies, charity commission as well. So the source of information that we've got, which we can then put into the newsletters, just to help support the treasurers and the trustees in their roles, because they often feel isolated, particularly treasurers. You can be the treasurer, or you know a bit about accounts or money, so you can be the treasurer, but there often wasn't a place where they could go to really find out how to do the job and what not to do. ACAT provides that support network for those people. Which I think are absolutely key for the mission and ministry of any church. Sort of out your financial administration, full stop. And it's just a building block to mission and ministry in any church.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And I pick up on your point there about treasurers feeling quite isolated, and the number of churches that I go and visit where the treasurer carries a huge burden and responsibility, and we've often talked to churches in the background saying, why don't you get a finance team together rather than it just being one individual that has to carry this load? And we're starting to see some of those changes, because some churches can think, right, well, one pastor joked, our treasurer's been doing it, he's in his 70s, he's been doing it for 35, 40 years, he hasn't been able to find somebody else to take it on. And that's actually a reality, isn't it, in lots of churches?
Yeah. So that's why we've actually introduced a relatively new course within the last couple of years. So you're thinking about being a treasurer,
Yeah.
And it's particularly to support those people who are wanting to leave existing posts after a long time and can't find anybody to take it on because they think it's far too complicated. So we just do a 1-hour course. We actually say, so you're thinking about being a treasurer, this is what you might get involved in as a treasurer. And and it gives them a bit of confidence when they eventually say yes to taking that role on. But it can be daunting.
Yeah, your guide for new church treasurers is great. Just just laying out questions and things to think about, and questions to ask, and being able to understand your scope and your remit. All of that stuff. If we can establish all of those things at the beginning, it just makes the role and much more joyful and much more, you're right, successful, and helps churches to be effective. And finances is a crucial part of gospel ministry, and we absolutely believe that. And having a treasurer who is supported and who is effective makes a massive difference.
Yes. I mean, actually, ACAT's started when charity legislation came in, probably 25, 30 years ago, and all of a sudden, charities and churches, majority of churches are charities in their own right, suddenly had to start complying with charity legislation, and most of the treasurers at the time thought, hang on a minute, what is this about? So ACAT started with a group of well-meaning people that actually said we need to be helping these treasurers, to enable them to do their job, and it's grown from there.
Yeah. And I love that, and I love the heart of ACAT, and we share the same heart at Church Office. We want to serve people who are serving churches, and if we can connect you to somebody else who does your role in another church, it makes a massive difference, doesn't it? And I think if you can, if you're listening to this podcast and you're feeling quite isolated in one of these roles, then please get in touch with ACAT. Please get in touch with the Church Office. Please contact another treasurer from another church. I mean, that doesn't tend to happen very much, does it?
No, absolutely. You are very isolated. I mean, some denominations or groups of churches may have groupings of people, but not many. So you are. I remember hearing a story from a treasurer a few years ago where they'd just taken on the job. They turned up at their first trustee meeting only for the minister to say, well, you know about finances. We don't need to have anything about finance on the agenda because you know what you're doing.
Okay.
And they thought, hang on a minute.
That's not how it works.
Expecting.
Yeah. And ministers and pastors that I've met, they do appreciate people with these kind of specialist skills in terms of finance, but we do have to see ministry as a team, don't we? And we keep that message coming back and through. Just because somebody is serving in this specific area, they need to be drawn in. They want to be transparent. They want to check things. And
I think what trustees will often forget is that just because they've got a treasurer that knows exactly what they're doing, it's still the trustee's responsibility to look after the admin and the finances of the church. It's not the treasurer on their own, their responsibility. But it's very easy to hand it over to the treasurer.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so, if you're a treasurer or you're a pastor listening to this, then it's worth just pausing and saying, have we got the right role? Do we need to expand it into a team or into a committee? Have we got the right software? Because those things can make a difference. I've been in churches that have been using Sage, and there aren't many people in the church who are trained to use Sage.
No.
So you can't get people in to help you and to work together. So there are things, again, actually, there are a younger generation who love technology, who I think would love to jump into a treasurer role, but some of the systems that are continually, aren't being updated, or we're using older stuff. It doesn't draw new people in. And I think there's some of that we need to change, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are actually specific church accounting software designed to understand the nuances of church accounting and particular fund accounting, which things like Sage probably wouldn't be able to cover that well. So there are organisations out there that actually do specifically for churches.
Yeah, great. And I'll recommend one, and this is only one that I'm recommending, but Expense Plus. A friend of mine, Sam Lewis, is created he's got a lovely heart, wants to serve local churches, set up some software for his own church, which was serving his church, and then began to serve other churches. And he's been released to set this company up and get it going. And we use it for the church office, and it's great.
Yeah. So there's Expense Plus, and we work with Sam as well, but there's Liberty Accounts, data development.
Yes.
We try not to recommend one product above another product, because churches, different denominations of churches as well, will have different requirements, and therefore one software package or insurance package or banking package will suit one church more than another church. So that all that we do is point people into the right direction to say, these are what we think works well for churches. You can look at the products that they've got and see what suits you best.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, and that's great. And these, I think, recommend software to, and certain these tools are available now, I guess, is what they do make a difference. And that's really useful. Now, I was listening to one of your trainers talking about churches and kind of and one of the stats that was being drawn out, and we chatted a little bit about this, didn't we? That 25% of churches don't have a budget or a plan around finances. That feels pretty shocking, really, doesn't it? Considering a lot of churches are charities, considering we're dealing with money on a regular basis every Sunday, we're dealing with offerings and stuff like that. If we've got staff employed, if we've got ministries that are running, it's surprising, and I think the churches that I work with, that stat probably feels like it might actually be slightly higher.
Yeah, I think I'm not quite sure where he got that figure of 25% from, but my actual experience, and I've worked in church administration for over 30 years now. My experience is that I would say a larger percentage than 25% probably do not plan and their finances in advance and budget. They very much see what's coming in week by week, month by month, and pay it out as they can afford it. But that really, was quite hard to plan future mission and ministry for that church, because you don't know what money you may have in the future to do things.
Yeah, we've come across a couple of churches where they've wanted to appoint a children's worker or a youth worker, and not necessarily had a budget in place. So they go to the church and say, "Would you give to cover this salary of this one person for a whole year, so we know we have it, so we can put it in place?" And I love, yes, there's some thinking and some planning on that. But then as you start to kind of unpick that and peel that back, you start to realize that actually they don't really know what income they've got. They don't really know what expenditure they've got. But actually, they may have actually be able to afford it without having to go back to the church for a specific restricted fund, if you like, to employ somebody. But if they just had a little bit more thought, and I come across that quite a lot, and I think, oh, okay, actually, I wonder why that is the case. And you start to peel it back and you say, maybe you need to come back a few steps and look at this whole area of budgeting. Is that your similar experience to that?
Yes, it is. It's again, it's not having a proper mission plan actually for the church, of which the finances are an important part of. It's all right saying develop youth work or children's work, but actually you need to work out whether you can afford that, whether you've got to go to the church to do particular funding. And, is a year long enough? You might get a year's funding, but actually for any work to be reasonably successful, it's, 2-3 year building
Yeah. Yeah.
to develop something. And therefore, if you do start to commit to those roles, you've actually got to plan it and think not just week by week, month by month, year by year, but 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line. Is this something which, as a church, is sustainable? And you need to budget for that. You need to make sure you've got the finance, because actually the last thing that the youth worker or children's worker wants to, is worry about their own role and whether it can be financed going forward.
Yeah, can they pay their own mortgage? Yeah, how do they get into some
Absolutely.
long term? So yeah, there's a whole thing, and that's where the budgeting, extends out, isn't it? That it's about people, that it's about ministry, that we facilitate and make ministry happen because we're able to do these things well. And that's so important. I think I've always benefited from the church that I've been working at. We've always had a senior pastor who has hugely valued and taken the time to plan the budget, to work that through, to inform the trustees, to get approval. He likes to see quarterly reports. He likes to look at things. He likes to see where ministries have been spending and not spending, and at the same time, has a real heart to say, right, if we're going to put 5,000 this year into the kids' work, he wants to see 5,000 spent investing into the kids' work.
Yes.
Because what we do find with churches is that if you underinvest in some of these different ministries over a 5-year period, in 5 years' time, they're going to need 20,000 to be spent.
Yes.
But we could have budgeted that for the last few years by investing it into a plan. And so we see these things so I've always really appreciated his leadership. And I know people listening to the podcast are going to have different experience. If you've got a senior pastor who's got that interest, who works like that, then it's great.
I think that's rare.
And is that rare? Okay. That can be rare.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're extremely lucky to have that. I haven't come across many churches which actually have the pastor really involved in the financial side. They do, in the main, tend to leave it to the treasurer.
Okay.
Which isn't good, because actually mission and ministry of the church has got to be connected with the finances and the long-term planning.
It's gospel ministry, and we have to see it in that category, and it really does make a difference. One of the things that you say in your content and stuff is kind of prayerfully planning, and I love that kind of, not just planning, not just getting a budget, but actually that kind of ministry link, as there's a prayerfulness about the way that we do things and what we're doing, and you guys bring that through in your material, which is great.
Yeah, that's quite key to me, really, because actually I've really never seen the role of, treasurers or trustees as what I would say purely administrative. They are very much key to the spiritual life of the church, and not disconnected from it. I remember when I started in my first role in a diocese in the Church of England as the finance director, I was told at the interview that there was a mission and ministry heads of department meeting every month. That I'd asked, and I was fully expecting, once I got into the diocese, to be invited to that meeting, and months went by and no invite came, and I was told that I was not part of the mission and ministry departments. Fortunately, I was able to change that particular later on, but finance administration is often not seen as connected to the main mission and prayer and spirituality of the church, but I think it's absolutely key.
I'm absolutely sold on it as well. So if you're a pastor listening to this, then please reconsider this and think, what, take a moment to think, what am I like in this? What am I like with the staff? What am I like with our treasurer? Do I need to make some changes? Do I need to change the way that we operate this? I think that would be a great starting point if you're a pastor. If you're a treasurer or finance officer, asking for some more help, asking for support, asking a few more questions. Initially, I know one church manager who really struggled in this area with a senior pastor. I said, why don't you start producing the quarterly report? And just email them saying, look, here's a couple of things that I picked up, and just to try and tease out a little bit of interest. And say the senior pastor, oh, did you realize what we spent this month on this? And just begin to create that little bit of interest. And I think, it took a couple of years for them, but what they did find actually is the senior pastor began to see some of the questions that were underlying why we might put a certain amount into a certain ministry. And it's helpful, isn't it? Your budget reflects your vision for the church, doesn't it? We can look at a budget and say, this is your church's priorities.
Yes.
We can see it. And if it's not, if it's, if people, I've met many churches say, right, we want to reach the next generation with the gospel, but they're putting £500 a year into children and young people's ministry.
And it's also important that a budget is mission-led, as opposed to the mission of the church governed by the finances, and some saying, oh, we can't afford to do this, we can't afford to do that. Set out your mission, set out your vision, and then build your budget around that mission and the vision of the church, not the other way around.
Absolutely, because we can call people, can't we, to give money if we've looked at our budget and we've got our vision in place and we're saying, right, here's the gap. We can call people and say, would you contribute to this? Would you get behind this? Would you get involved in this in our church to enable this to happen? And give people that opportunity to give to something as well. But unless we know what the gap is, we can't call people to it, can we?
That's why we always say that actually, when you start thinking about a budget or finances, first of all, think about what you want to do as a church, where you want to go, where you want to develop and grow. Is it children's work? Is it youth work? Is it sort of looking after the homeless? And then build that picture, and then you are sort of able to go to the church to say, okay, we want to build our church by 20 or 30 or 40 new young people every year. We therefore need a youth minister. That will cost us X. The church will give for a project or a purpose, rather than this is just to support the church in its general administration. Give them a task and they will give towards that if they sign up to the vision of the church.
And we've got a couple of restricted funds going, so we've got a kind of a mission fund, which is kind of outside of the church, and we've got a mercy fund that serves, locally to do food bank, CAP, and various other projects. And it's nice. I think it's great for churches to consider, what should we have some restricted funds, and what some of those restricted funds would be useful to do. And manage them in that way, and give people some opportunity to give into that kind of broader sense. So Ashley, in terms of if someone's listening to this going, okay, I'm in a position where I don't have a church budget, what's the advice? How do you start? Where do you begin? This is the magic question,
wow. Going in there. I suppose the easy thing is attend our budgeting course with ACAT.
Number one.
But but no, I think as I said earlier, don't start with the budget. Start with the vision of the church. Start with what you want to do, where you want to go. Then you start building up the numbers behind that. So you look at the cost of that project, employing people, and you start to write that down, and look at the basics of gas, electricity, water, IT, support, admin, a support for the church and think, what does that cost? And just, build a picture up so you can see where the church where the income meets the expenditure. Or in many cases doesn't meet the expenditure. And therefore you need to go to the church, to say, this is what we want to do. We now need to fund it.
And what I would say to people as well is that there's a difference, isn't there, between sort of financial accounts and management accounts. And I think, yes, as treasurers and finance teams, we've got work to do in terms of presenting our financial accounts, meeting all the requirements that we need for the Charities Commission. But where pastors may be interested is in the more management accounts, in the ministry amounts, in setting budgets for that. So I think you're right. It's a starting point of, maybe there's some education stuff and training. Maybe there is some kind of, what is our church already doing? What would we like to do in the future? What's that vision building? And you're right, the numbers then come behind. But actually, getting some data of what have we spent over the last few years on different things? Isn't it? Because that's an easy look back of what are some of our costs?
And if you've never asked that question, it could be that you're not on a good tariff for gas and electricity, and you've never reviewed it because you've always paid, the bill,
whatever it was.
Is that the cheapest resource out there? Do we need X, Y, and Z? Why we've always done it like this. A phrase that you often hear, but actually you should be asking, well, why have we done it like that? And actually, do we need to do it like that? And incur that cost? Are there different ways of reducing costs of churches?
Absolutely right. Well, mate, that's a good starting point. And if you want some help, if you'd like to chat to somebody, then please get in contact. Sign up to become a member of ACAT. Look at the training opportunities there. Please get in contact with the church office. We've got some stuff on our website related to finance. We'll help pastors to try and engage in this topic. So please send your questions into questions@thechurchoffice.co.uk. We'd love to be able to, explore you, connect you to different people. We want to see churches served. We want to see people in these roles served and supported. So please do that. Ashley, any other things that you're involved in at the minute that might be useful or helpful for our listeners to connect with you on?
Probably not. ACAT takes a lot of my time up at the moment, so no, nothing else further to say, I don't think.
Great. You filled us in on all the gaps. If you're involved in church finances, then let me encourage you. Thank you for what you're doing. You make a difference, not just for your local church, but for the gospel, for the wider ministry. And they're often thankless tasks, but please know God's pleasure towards you as you serve him in this role. And thank you for listening to the podcast today. If you do have any questions, please get in touch, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you for your time, Ashley.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you.
Great.